Okay, I am back with another study tip for terminology. You can do this for the skin unit, but you can do this really for any terminology unit. As you see, we can see a diagram of the skin. It is labeled with full words, but you can start with a blank template. Every time I try to study word roots, I also try to simultaneously study anatomy because many of our word roots for any system describe just that. They describe parts of a system. So why not visually map those word parts onto an image that just cross-references the material in your brain, and you're usually going to have to remember where these parts are on a diagram anyways. So when you start studying a diagram, start breaking down the names of sciencey looking words into word parts. Adipose is probably made up of the word adipo, and dermis is made up of the word part dermo. And then I'm going to think about all of my synonyms, any other word parts that mean the same things, and I'm going to use those word parts to label my diagram. And then the next thing that you're going to see is that we're also going to add in any terms that I've had in prior units that could also label structures on this diagram, and anything that might describe the feature or the function of these diagrams. So this is a way that I can study multiple units, multiple parts, and functions all in the same tool. Helps if you can do this using an unlabeled diagram, or if you need some supports, you can start off with the full name labels and you can just add the roots or mix it up. You can pull these from an image search, or I've provided this blank template in your slides. You can also use the 2-minute skin diagram drawing tutorial to show you how to make your own diagram, and then within really less than 2 minutes you can have a simple diagram that you can label and study with in any way that you choose. So starting at the top, we have hair, and I could use pylo, pyli, and tricho to label that. Sweat can be labeled with diaphoro and hydro, as in hyperhidrosis would be a profuse overacting sweating condition. Diaphoresis would be like actually sweating. Epi and dermo can be used to describe the top layer of skin. Skin itself, the dermal layer, is described with 3 roots, and the subcutaneous layer I can break into sub and cutaneo, but I can also describe it as the hypodermis, so hypo and dermo can also fit. Going up to the stratum corneum, this was not something that I asked you to memorize as a structure, but I did ask you to know that your outermost layer of skin is just made up of dead cells, which is gross to kind of think of, like we're all really dead on the outside, or even a fresh baby is really mostly dead on the surface. But it also makes sense because this is your protective layer. So since we're scratching and constantly exposed to the environment, we want to have cells on that surface that are expendable. So I might use necro to remind me that, we're mostly dead on the outside. Then I'm going to get down to the next section, which is going to look at the hair muscle, the erector pili muscle, and I'm going to use 2 old terms, myo and musculo, to describe that. The oil gland comes from this unit. It produces oil or sebum, and if I break that down, that's sebo. The blood vessels, I can use my vascular terms, and I can use color terms to describe the redness of that blood and the fact that it provides a flush undertone to living skin. Not to mention, if you blush or have a rash, then those vessels are going to vasodilate and let more blood to the surface and more heat to the surface. So we might use terms like hemo and vaso and vasculo and hemato and erythro to remind us of the functions of the vessels in our dermis. Neuro can be used to describe the nerve, and looking at the nerve in skin helps me to remember that in the dermis I've got a ton of different receptors that make my skin a sense organ, a sense to touch and pressure and pain and sensation. So I might use neuro and aesthesio to remind me of sensation. And then finally, our subcutaneous layer is made up of primarily adipose tissue, which we know is fat, and so I would use adipo because that is a root for adipose. But I'd also use lipo because that's in our unit for this system and it means fat. And I might think of liposuction and then think of the fact that this is the area that I'm trying to target, is right below the skin, to suck out that excess fatty tissue. Okay, so hopefully that is also helpful for you in studying for not only this unit, but for reviewing other units as well.